Thought I'd seen it all before. A world of trouble knocking at my door. But this ain't like nothing that I recall.
Welcome to In Crisis, Travel Retail Voices, our podcast series in which we speak to travel retail executives around the world about how COVID-19 has affected their lives and businesses. I'm Dermot Davitt. In this episode, we speak to experienced in-flight retail executive Joe Harvey, who's begun a new agency venture, Shannon Retail Innovation, to represent up-and-coming entrepreneurial brands and travel retail. Now, Joe's experienced the impact of the COVID-19 crisis firsthand, having exited in-flight services company Retail in Motion amid its own crisis-related restructuring. But he'd been planning his own new venture for some time, he explains, and sees this change in his career as a big opportunity. Joe talks about that opportunity, the kinds of brands he plans to partner with, and also about how he sees the industry emerging from this deep and unprecedented crisis. Joe, just tell us first about how the COVID-19 crisis has affected daily life and also how it's set in train the career move that you're making now.
Yeah, I think it started in late March when Retail in Motion obviously were looking at where they were going to go forward, and they had to make some decisions, and I was laid off by the company, and fully understandable because boutique duty free is not something that, with nobody flying and things like that, there's no new business out there, or there's no need to put ranges together and things like that. So that kind of went on for a couple of months, and at that stage I was beginning to look at my own agency and my own business, and then they kind of came and said, Joe, let's unfortunately we'll have to make you redundant. And I've no animosity against it. I had 3 amazing years in Retail in Motion. We had 3 huge successes with 2 airline contracts and obviously the award in Cannes last year. So, I'm very thankful for the 3 years I had with RIM, and I've been involved in in-flight retail since 2004. So maybe it is time I went on to the supplier side and had a look at that and see what that's like.
Sure. Well, just on that subject, tell us a bit more about Shannon Retail Innovation. The name will resonate with quite a few people, so maybe just explain that first and we'll come on to what you plan to do afterwards.
Well, it's interesting because it is something that has been on my mind about doing for quite a while. And I sat down with a couple of people, including Barry Gagan. And funny enough, we sat in Starbucks in February and said, geez, if it was to do something like this, what would you think, Barry? And he was like, yeah, no, look, listen, you know the industry inside out and things like that. And we were throwing around names between each other. Barry says, somebody hasn't used Shannon for quite a while, And it does resonate with the industry. And the innovation piece as well, it's a real tip your hat to Brendan O'Regan and the guys who in 1947 put everything in play for what is our industry now. And it's a good way of saying thank you to them, saluting them and things like that, And it's interesting, I was reading a bit about Brendan O'Regan, and we'd have a very similar background in the fact that he was a hotel manager as well, and I did hotel management. So if I can follow in his footsteps and be as successful as he was, then I'll be very happy. But yeah, so it's Shannon Retail Innovation. We're based in Dublin. It's a real tip your hat to the legends of our industry that set it up.
Very good. And just on what you plan to do with the new company, who you represent, and I suppose also what will set you apart in the world of travel retail agency and distribution.
What I'm planning on doing, and I've started to do already, is that I want to predominantly work with entrepreneurs, and I predominantly want to work with some startup companies as well, because it is a very complex world, the world of travel retail, and it can be a lot different to domestic retail. And if you don't get it right at the start, it could have a real detrimental effect to your brand. And then also, on the other hand, some people really just don't understand the logistics around the whole way of doing business in travel retail and things like that. So in the moment, I'm talking to a number of entrepreneurial brands and startup brands and where we take them forward and look at that. And I mean, what I'm like when it comes to being passionate about what I do. Being able to work with somebody else who's really passionate about their brand and want their brand to succeed. I've started working with about 3 or 4 Irish brands as well and helping them and working with them. And I've done a little bit of work with a great brand from Waterford called Mohican, which is a gents cosmetic brand. And there's a real massive growth potentially in gents cosmetics in the next 4 to 5 years, especially in Asia. And so I really, high hopes for Charlotte and Mark and their brand. And they're just fabulous guys to work with.
Yeah. And in terms of the numbers of brands that you ultimately aim to work with and any partnerships that you've struck to date or will be soon, I guess some of it will be watch this space. But in terms of those that you've either signed or plan to sign? So predominantly Irish. Are you focusing on particular categories or spreading the net quite wide?
I'm probably looking at about 6 or 7 brands. And the important thing is that I don't want brands that compete against each other, because it's very difficult if you're sitting in front of a buyer from one of the major airports to be presenting 2 brands that have the same similar type products. So the 6 brands I'm talking to are all very different. They pick up niches in skincare, cosmetics and accessories. And I'm potentially talking to one alcohol brand as well. And I like that, because that means then that you've got a variation to talk to. And so, yeah, I'm looking and hoping to be around the 6 brand mark. And as I say, we're at contract stage with all of them at the moment, which brings its own challenges, as you would know yourself, but it's good fun.
And just on encouraging and advising brands that are aiming to get into the industry, and you'll have seen quite a few of them before in previous roles, what are the common pitfalls or areas that they really don't understand and perhaps maybe surprise and shock them sometimes in terms of getting into travel retail overall, and the areas in which you'll be primarily aiming to guide some of those?
Yeah, there's a lot around. You look even at in-flight, for example, there's a lot around listing fees, advertising fees, sailor return. There's a lot around supply chains. As I was saying to one brand yesterday, that, I'm not here just to sell your brand. I'm here to manage your brand. So it's as if I'm part of your workforce. So even if we get a listing tomorrow, I just don't walk away and say, look, off you go. We look after and work with the supply chain companies and different things like that to ensure. And we manage the account on a daily basis as well with the operators. I think one of the hardest pieces for new brands, and it's difficult for them to understand, is that how in-flight works or how travel retail works around the MOQ piece. Some people would think, oh, well, I only need 40 or 50, but you get a listing in an airport shop and it could be multiple outlets. You could be talking thousands. Even on an in-flight, for example, a major airline, an in-flight, you're looking at a minimum of 450 pieces. And it's explaining all that kind of stuff to them, so that they understand, nobody pays up front anymore, and, the invoice terms and the customs terms. And like I was telling you, in Ireland, we have a game called hurling, and, a guy turned up with hurley sticks one day, small little hurley sticks that he thought would sell well on Aer Lingus, and he'd 40 of them in a suitcase and thought I was going to buy them off him there and then, so.
Doesn't quite work like that,
I don't think I could turn up to Dubai duty free with a suitcase of product. Colin and the team would tell me to go very quickly.
Maybe once upon a time, Joe. Maybe once upon a time. And just on a wider picture, we started just talking about crisis and how you've reacted to it as well. How do you see the industry overall emerging from it? What do you think we need to do to emerge fitter and stronger for what will ultimately be a new kind of consumer?
It's kind of like a half and half split. Yes, there is a lot of unfortunate people who have lost their jobs or been furloughed or different things like that. But there is people, especially in Dublin, for example, in the IT sector. And, we've got the Googles, the Facebooks and things like that in Dublin. There's a lot of those workers are working from home and they really haven't had anything to spend their money on. And I think that when these guys all start traveling again, I'm really positive. I think that our industry, it won't be as strong as it was before, but there is positive elements to as soon as people can start flying and getting back into the groove. I think price sensitivity will be a huge, huge part of going forward.
Yeah, we've heard quite a lot from CEOs of airport companies and travel retailers talking about pent-up demand from around the various markets. I think that's the impression a lot of people have. Of course, people also need to feel comfortable in the environment, and that's where the industry needs to react and adapt quite quickly overall. And I guess that comes down also to the airline business. And I suppose with your airline hat on in particular, how do you see the future of that channel shaping up? Clearly with distancing required between crew and passengers right now maybe isn't a great moment, but in the future, will that channel, that sector of the business need to adapt perhaps even further than other parts of it?
I was reading the other day that if you fly on the Dreamliner, the 787 Dreamliner, the filtration system on that is better than even some of the hospitals. The likes of Ethiopian Airlines, who have quite a few 787s, or Etihad have some new 787s. And I know all the airlines are working on, how to improve the filtration system on board and things like that. And that will give people a lot of confidence. And I think, maybe the airports need to look at, is there a way of sanitizing people coming off a flight? I don't know. I've seen some stuff over the last few days. Interesting. I've seen a South African company have a thing called a sanitizing pod, which could be something that could work. It clears away any form of COVID-19. I think, for me, it's how we look at all these type of things, I'm putting my Shannon Retail Innovation hat on here. If you look, the quality of masks. And that's what I have a worry about is that, certain masks that people are wearing just, I think, would be even more detrimental to it than, I know we have a mask out there now at the moment, which is a filter-rated mask. But to me, it's just about getting a standard. I think normality could return, once we don't get the second wave. I think normality could return a lot quicker than we would have expected it to.
Yeah, let's hope so, certainly. And clearly there's an emerging category there of face masks and other types of protective equipment that's almost already become a category of itself in travel retail and indeed other environments that people are keen to tap into. And as you say, with Breathe Happy, I believe is the name of the brand, you're already making a mark in that respect.
Yeah, I'm working with a London company with Richard and Lisa, and Breathe Happy it's a filtered mask that you just replace the filters every 7 days. So from an economical and commercial perspective, it's very good because it saves a lot of companies on having to buy disposable masks. But what's most important about it is that, and we can't forget about the environment. And what drew me to Breathe Happy is that the amount of masks that are going to be dumped and put in bins and left around, like with our mask, you don't have to change the mask, you just change the filter in the mask. To me, it really appealed to me from a sustainability perspective. And I think that's really, really important. Brendan O'Regan had a vision in 1947 to set up duty free. And I think we all need to look at new visions now. And hats off to yourself and Martin with the virtual travel expo. The only thing is I just wish you could fix up for us to go in the evening times for a couple of pints somewhere, but
we're working on it, Joe. We're working on that.
It's visionary things like that. That's what we need, We can't just sit around. I think what we need to do is it needs to be a very collaborative industry. And to me, I've always been into partnerships and collaborations. And if people start trying to squeeze each other, then that'll be really not a good thing for our industry.
Yeah, and I guess the temptation is there, given the pressures that are on individuals and corporations out there now, and to find a way through that will be one of the industry challenges for this year and well into next and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's down to those long-term relationships that you're looking at. It's not as if we think, this will be all gone by September. This could be something that could be around for a year, it could be 2 years, I hope it's not. When September the 11th hit, I was working in Aer Lingus at the time, and I always remember people saying that they wouldn't ever fly to America again. But within 4 or 5 months, the 105 at 10:30 on a Monday morning was jam-packed off to New York, So I hope that a normality will and a sensibility will return, and everybody working together, will be how we'll succeed.
Finally, at a personal level, what's it been like living in lockdown in Dublin? You've been a lot fewer flights for a start, I would imagine, in the last few months. And do you know when you're going to take your first one again?
Yeah, I'm planning to go to London second week in July. Is going to be my first trip to London for a couple of nights, and the sooner we all get back traveling, the better. It's such a strange thing. I have to say, to me, there's so many heroes have come out of COVID, all this crisis and pandemic. But to me, I will never ever say anything bad about a school teacher ever again, because when you're doing homeschooling, I tell you something, they're legends.
Not as easy as it looks, is it?
No. And, they're the unsung heroes of this pandemic. The sooner the schools can go back, the better, and the teachers, because I have 3 here and I love my children to bits, but homeschooling, oh my God.
Yeah, very good. Well, listen, Joe, we wish you well on the journey that you're embarking on right now, of course, and we'll see you probably later in the year, I'm sure, physically and virtually, with any luck. Yeah.
Thanks, Dermot, and the best of luck to yourself and Martin and the whole team at Moody Davitt. And, I really appreciate the support you've given me, and thank you very much.
And I swear one day we're gonna put this out behind us, and come what may, we will survive. I think it's safe to say that better times are gonna find us. Hope it won't be long till this trouble is gone.